I think it's good, yeah. All right, welcome to Union Hill. If you want to come in and have a seat, we're going to go ahead and get this evening started. All right. Well, my name is Jessica Broadway. I'm a member here at Union Hill Church of Christ, and we thank you for letting us share and hosting this event tonight and you all being here to support and hear this great message tonight. I want to introduce Coach Perry, who really doesn't need much of an introduction at all. We all know how he's impacting our kids and our communities, so if you would show your appreciation to Coach Perry.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to be brief, I promise. First of all, let me say this, because I know we have some of them in the building. Our sponsors are recognized up here, and I know we have Borough Health here as our title sponsor. The rest of them are up here. Those are the folks that help make this happen. You know, without their support, you know, we wouldn't have been able to do this today. You know, and as of right now, I think this is number 8 presentation that my man's done today. He's done 7 in the schools already. So if he messes this one up, there's a problem. You know what I'm saying? He is well practiced, okay? Well, anyway, we do thank the sponsors, man. Absolutely fabulous. And I'll say this, at the end of the night, you know, if there's something said that, you know, you want to talk to somebody, I know Borough Health is here. They'll stay around afterwards, as well as Damon will be here, okay? The reason why he's here, pretty simple. I watched a video over 2 years ago. I just happened to cross it on the internet. And when I got through watching the video, I thought, how can I get him to Pearl, Mississippi in front of my kids? Because, you know, if we're in this business for the right reason, we're in this business to change lives, influence young people, old people, whoever we run in front of. And the message was really, really good. It touched me. So I got on Twitter, and I hit him up, and I said, can I get your cell number? I called him. I said, how can I get you to Pearl? And probably within 9 months or so, you know, we bring him to Pearl. He speaks in 2 prisons. He does a banquet for the football team, and he does a community deal like this, you know. And as soon as I got this job, you know, it was one of the first people that I hit up because I know, you know, impacting young people is what we're about. And his story is amazing. So, you know, I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. Like I said, he's well practiced today. So without further ado, Mr. Damon West.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this thing on? It's on. Is this one on? Am I on? Y'all here? Okay, good. Can y'all see me okay right here? Or do I need to hop up here? Hop up? Got it. All right. Good? All right. Let me see if I can this roll? Okay, great. I'm going to just move this a little bit. I don't get behind podiums. Podiums, I'm really like, I make a cup of coffee nervous, y'all. So thank you for having me in your town. I mean, what an honor, what a treat to be able to impact so many lives at one time, to be able to actually try to speak to all 6,500 students in your town and y'all tonight, and even last night too. It's rare that you get an opportunity as a speaker and author to go out and impact a community in this way. So I want y'all to know how grateful I am for this opportunity. Opportunities is what I want to talk to you about tonight. Finding the opportunities in adversity. Right now, Nixa is going through a lot of adversity right now. Y'all are dealing with a lot. I mean, on top of the pandemic, you've had other things that have happened here, suicides. You've had a lot of stuff you're dealing with as a community. No community should have to deal with what you're doing, but you're doing it. You're picking up your feet, and you're moving forward. But that's what we have to do. You got to get up and keep putting one foot in front of the other. I'm going to tell y'all a story tonight, my life story. It's what I share with groups and teams and organizations all the time about how to overcome and find the obstacles in adversity and persevere and find hope in any situation. Because no situation is hopeless. It's seemingly hopeless. We talk about this in recovery and addiction a lot. It's seemingly hopeless, isn't it? It's not really hopeless. So let's start this story out. 13 years ago, July 30th, 2008, I'm sitting around this little rundown apartment in Dallas, and I'm sitting on this little ratty old couch, and I've got my meth dealer sitting next to me on the couch, this guy named Tex. I'm a full-blown meth addict 13 years ago, y'all. And I'm sitting there smoking this glass pipe with this meth in it, passing it back and forth, and I'm telling Tex, my meth dealer, text, I think the end is near. I think the cops are about to come get me. 10 days before this guy I've been doing all these burglaries with in Dallas, this guy named Dustin, had been picked up by the Dallas Police Department. So I know it's just a matter of time before they get to me, and just as I pass the pipe back to Tex, I heard a window shatter off to my right. And tumbling across my living room floor is this little canister going end over end and smoking on one side. And man, it starts to register what's going on. I've seen this movie before. You know, I know what's about to go down. I try to get off that couch and get out of that living room. Too late. Boom! The flashbang grenade went off right in my face. Bright white light, loud noise, blows me back on the couch. And when I came to, when I could see and hear again, there's this cop in full SWAT riot gear. Man, he's got his boot on my chest and the barrel of an assault rifle is digging in my eye socket. I can feel the barrel against my eyeball. It's cold. And he's got his finger on that trigger, and he is screaming at me at the top of his lungs, "Don't move! Don't move!" I looked up at this cop, and I blinked, and I was like, "Don't worry, don't worry, So cops start flooding to my apartment, and one of them screams out, "We got him! We got the uptown burglar." The uptown burglar. I've been telling your children in this town today, really the junior high ones were the ones that started getting the story. The story graduates as you go into different levels. You got to tailor it for the audience. So the 5th graders, 6th graders didn't hear this. But the junior high kids did get to hear this about the consequences of my decisions. Consequences run with us for the rest of our lives. That name, that moniker, the uptown burglar, that'll go on with me forever, no matter how many people I can positively impact. About a dozen other meth addicts and myself, young and old, male and female, black and white, and everything in between. Because drugs and addiction don't discriminate. They don't care who you are, or your race, your gender, your mom and dad, your socioeconomic status. They don't care. They don't discriminate. But we, indiscriminately and without reservation, broke into the homes of dozens of people in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas to feed our insatiable meth habits. But on July 30th, 2008, the uptown burglaries came to an end. That's when they had their man. They zip-tied me on the floor of that apartment, took me down to Dallas County Jail, processed me in fingerprints, mugshots. They threw me in a holding cell. And I spent that first 24 hours of my incarceration with one thought going through my head, the thought of the addict. How do I get high again? I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about my victims. I didn't care about myself. I've got a first-degree felony for organized crime with a potential life sentence hanging over my head, and I just care about getting high again. And honestly, I played with that thought for the next 10 months while I sat in Dallas County Jail, and I waited for my day in court. And at the end of 10 months, I got my day in court. Actually, Dallas gave me 6 days in court. They put on such a long trial. And at the end of 6 days, on May 18th, 2009, a jury of my peers listened to so much overwhelming evidence of my guilt that they went to deliberate for 10 minutes on my sentence. 10 minutes. I don't know how much Law and Order y'all watch, but if a jury's gone for 10 minutes, they smoked you. Man, when I came back in that courtroom, that judge who hadn't smiled the entire trial, he is grinning from ear to ear, and he gavels it in. Bam, bam, bam. He said, "Damon Joseph West, you are hereby sentenced to 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice." 65 years is a life sentence in Texas, y'all. Now, obviously, I didn't do 65 years in prison because you're not looking at a hologram here. You're looking at the real thing. I'm really here. So I did 7 years and 3 months in a maximum security penitentiary in Beaumont, Texas, called the Mark Stiles Unit. One of the toughest prisons in America, and I can tell you I know a lot about prisons in America because today in this new life, among the other things I do, I went back to school and got my master's in criminal justice, and today I'm a professor at the University of Houston. Yeah, get this. The class I teach at University of Houston is called Prisons in America. Yeah, how about that? Prisons in America. I was in a prison in America 5 years ago serving life, y'all. On November 16th, 2015, the parole board came to visit me. And the lady from parole had my parole file out, and she closed it up after about 30 seconds and shoved it away. She said, "Mr. West," she said, honestly, she said, "we don't see a lot of people come through the state prison system like you, Mr. West. You had everything going for you in life, every privilege and opportunity in life, and you blew through all of that. You became a meth addict. You became a criminal. You made a lot of victims. A jury gave you life in prison for the things you did." She said, "But instead of coming to this prison and letting that life sentence define you," she said, "Mr. West, you changed yourself inside of this prison." She said, "Matter of fact, you changed the entire prison around you. So I have one question for you today, Mr. West. Here it is. This question is going to decide whether or not I go home or stay in prison." She said, "If you could be remembered for being anything in this life, anything at all," she said, "give it to me in just one word, go." And man, you talk about an easy question for a coffee bean to answer. I fired her answer back at her real quick, and I said, ma'am, useful. I just want to be useful, and I can be useful in prison, or I can be useful out there in the free world finding those coffee beans. And they let me go. They let me go under one condition, that if I come back in handcuffs anywhere between now and the year 2073, when I get off parole, they'll keep me this time until 2073. So I'm on parole the rest of my life. But honestly, y'all, I'm not worried about parole. I don't care about the parole part. That's not a cavalier statement saying I'm a buck authority. No, parole tells me to jump. I ask them how high and how many times. I do everything parole tells me to do. I'm a rule follower today. But the reason why I tell you I'm not worried about parole is because today I'm a coffee bean. And as a coffee bean, the only way I'm going back to prison is when I'm going back in there to share this message of hope to the inmates inside. And I get to go quite a bit. So let me back the story up and tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in a town called Port Arthur, Texas. Port Arthur's down where Louisiana and Texas meet on the Gulf Coast, right by a town called Beaumont, probably the biggest town you've heard of down there. I came from a great family. My dad, Bob West, was a sports writer there for 50 years. My mom was a nurse, got an older brother named Brandon, younger brother named Grayson. Nice, little, happy family. God was at the center of everything in our home. It wasn't like we were lacking that. My mom, we surely weren't lacking that. My mom's one of those moms that has a prayer plaque or a cross in every room in the house. You can't escape God in my mom's house, even to this day. It's like an explosion in a cross factory, you know. So my mom's a very spiritual woman. But we had some problems growing up. I had some issues. When I was 9, I was molested by a babysitter. By the time I was 10, I got into my dad's beer in the fridge. I liked to put in chemicals to change the way I felt, you know. I was experimenting with alcohol, my mom's cigarettes. By the time I was 12, I was smoking pot. Got a bad belief system developing. A belief system that tells me all I'm doing is drink a little beer, smoke a little pot. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not even hurting myself. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Had a lot of character issues, a lot of flaws. But y'all, I could throw a football. God blessed me with a cannon for a right arm. And this is Texas, man. All this stuff you hear about Texas high school football, it's the truth. It's like a religion down there, and everybody goes to worship on Friday nights. And I was a Friday night star. I was a star quarterback in my area of Texas. I was a 3-year starter in high school. I got a scholarship to play ball at the University of North Texas, playing Division I college quarterback. By the time I'm 20 years old, I'm starting Division I in college. And man, boy, I thought I had arrived. But life has a way of giving you these days that I call fork in the road days. And a fork in the road is when life's going to knock you down so hard one day, and you get back up and dust yourself off, the entire world looks different, man. You got hit so hard. But you got a choice to make. You're going to make the right choice to go the right way, or the wrong choice to go the wrong way at that fork in the road. September 21st, 1996, we took the field against Texas A&M that Saturday afternoon. Beautiful day in College Station, Texas. We go out there. I'm 20 years old. I'm the starting quarterback. And by the third play of the game, I go down with a separated shoulder. The last play I ever play in college. My career is over. Never played college football again. And when I got up to that fork in the road in life, and my identity, because I identified being a football player, my identity was gone, made a lot of wrong choices. Instead of drinking a little beer, smoking a little pot, now I'm putting in the hardcore stuff, cocaine, ecstasy, pills, you name it. Somehow I graduated college in 1999. I moved off to Washington, D.C. Got a job working in the United States Congress. After I worked in Congress for a little while, I went to work for a guy running for president of the United States, a guy from the state of Missouri, a guy named Dick Gephardt. Gephardt was running for president in 2004. I raised money for him all over the country. I was here in Missouri raising money in 2004. And when he drops out of the race in 2004, I moved back to Dallas, Texas to train to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. And it was at that job as a broker that I hit a very big fork in the road in my life. I was passed out of sleep at work one day. It's 2004. I'm passed out of sleep at work because I had been up for a couple of days partying. And this other broker comes up and sees me sleeping. And he freaks out. He wakes me up. He's like, Damon. He said, man, wake up. He said, you can't sleep on this job. The markets are open. You know, you're messing with people's money. They'll fire you for sleeping on this job one time. He said, come on down to the parking garage. I got something that's going to pick you up. So I got up and went down to the parking garage. And we get into his car, and he hands me this glass pipe with these little crystal rocks in it. And I freak out on him. I've never seen a glass pipe. I'm like, you know, what is that? He's like, Damon, just relax. He said, it's crystal meth. He said, you'll love this stuff. Y'all, truer words have never been spoken. That drug is a monster. And I've told your kids all day today, the junior high ones and the high school ones are going to get it even harder tomorrow. If you don't remember anything I say, remember this next 30 seconds, that meth is the most evil, most destructive, most addictive chemical drug ever made, man. And stuff is made in a lab, and it's made to hook you. It got me. I smoked it one time, instantly hooked, just like that. And I could not give everything away fast enough for that drug. My job, my home, my car, my savings account, my family, my tethering to God, whatever was left of that. And I went from working on Wall Street to living on the streets of Dallas, homeless, sleeping in abandoned buildings, living out of people's cars, living in dope houses where they're the dope fiends, because that's what I am, is a dope fiend. And I started committing simple property crimes to pay for my addiction, breaking into people's cars, breaking into people's storage units, and eventually I escalated it to home burglaries. Y'all, I never miss an opportunity to talk about my victims. They're the most important component to this story because they paid the biggest price for me to even have this story. My victims, the burglary victims, I didn't just steal these people's property. I stole these people's sense of security. I don't know if they ever get that back, y'all. That's a real serious thing, and they have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But on July 30th, 2008, after 3 years of committing property crimes against the people in Dallas, the Dallas SWAT team put an end to the Uptown burglaries. That was the day they arrested me. Or as I tell audiences everywhere I go, that wasn't just the day I was arrested. Man, that was the day I was rescued, y'all. God got me out of a situation I could not get myself out of or did not want to get myself out of. So now we're back where the story started. I'm in that holding cell right after my arrest. And the guards come to get me after about 24 hours. And these folks are mad at me, man. I've been terrorizing Dallas for 3 years with these Uptown burglaries, and now they've got me in chains. They take me and put me in one of the worst pods they could find, man. Toughest pod there was in Dallas County Jail. Within 24 hours of that, I get in my first fight over a breakfast tray, and I lost. Y'all, jail was terrifying for me, and I'm not a big guy, and I'm scared to death, and all I want to do is talk to my mom and my dad. So I get on the phone in the day room. They got these phones, these blue day room phones you can call home. I call home to Port Arthur. My dad answers the phone first. My father's from an older generation of men. I've never seen my father cry in my entire life, but I heard him cry one time, and that was when I called home from jail. And he is screaming and crying on the phone. He sounds like a wounded animal. Damon, how we go so wrong, man? How we mess up so bad? What could we have done different? He's crying, and now I'm crying because I broke my dad. My mom snatches the phone out of my dad's. My mom's a nurse. She's used to traumatic situations. She can compartmentalize the pain. She gets on the phone. She said, Damon, listen, your father can't talk right now. I've never seen your dad like this before in my life, but we need to have a serious conversation. We need to talk. She said, you need to understand that we love you unconditionally. She said, that was the deal we made with God when he loaned you to us. She said, do you understand that we love you unconditionally? And through the tears, I was like, yeah, Mom, I got it. You love me unconditionally. And she said, that's good, baby, because we just gave you back to God. She said, there's nothing we can do for you anymore, Damon. She said, never forget what she said. She said, you are now a captive audience to God, and you better start listening. And then she asked me a question. She said, Damon, do you remember that prayer plaque that I had on your wall as a kid growing up? Remember I told you my mom has these plaques and crosses everywhere, right? She wants to know about the one above my bed where I slept on Roanoke Street in Port Arthur all my life growing up. And man, I've been out of that dope for 4 years, y'all. My brain's fried. I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? What prayer plaque? She said, baby, it's footprints in the sand. She said, do you remember the story of footprints in the sand? I was like, Mom, I don't. So she patiently and lovingly retold me the story of footprints in the sand about a guy walking on the beach with God, right? She said they're walking on the beach and they're watching a video of his life play out in the sky. And she said every time something good happened in that man's life, there was 2 sets of footprints walking side by side. Things are going well. She said, but every time something bad happened, when there was pain, there was hurt, there was suffering, if there was loss, he'd lose his football career, the guy saw 1 set of footprints. And she said, finally the guy said, you know, God, I can't take this anymore. Every time something good happens in my life, man, you're walking with me side by side. Man, I can see the footprints up there. But every time something bad happens, God, you keep abandoning me. I see 1 set of footprints. Why did you abandon me? And she said that's when God laughed and said, Damon, you fool. Every time you saw 1 set of footprints, I didn't abandon you. I carried you, boy. She started screaming like a football coach. She's like, Damon, look down that jail cell right now. She said, baby, there's only 1 set of footprints, and they're not yours. She said, get on God's back. I don't want to lose my son. So, y'all, that night, I started talking to God again. But this isn't some Paul on the road to Damascus story. This isn't a jailhouse conversion story. Not yet. I wasn't there. I was still an addict in my addiction. I'd pray every night. Let me tell you my prayer, too. I'd get on my knees every night in Dallas County Jail. Dear God, please, boy, get me out of this one. And if you do, bargaining, huh? They like that bargain with God? Yeah, right. And if you do, boy, I'll be a normal guy again. I'll go get a job, and I'll just smoke meth on the weekends. I got this. Obviously, that didn't get answered. Because when I went to that trial 10 months later, and that jury came back in 10 minutes with a life sentence, it took my breath away. It took my mom's breath away. My mom was in the front row of the courtroom. And when the judge read the sentence out, she gasped. You know, the sound only a mother can make when she hears her son get a life sentence in prison. And after that, it was over, and everything sped up real fast. The bailiffs were on me, the sheriffs were on me. They dragged me out of the courtroom, and all I could think to say is, drag me out of the courtroom, and I'm sorry, Mom. They put me in this little side room. It's got a bulletproof glass right there. They told me to wait. The sheriff told me to wait. About 5 minutes later, my parents come in. They're going to give them one last visit with me before I go to prison. My dad comes in first. He's stoic, man. He's in stunned disbelief. He just saw his son, with all this promise in life, get a life sentence in prison. So my mom does all the talking. And she said, baby, she said, debts in life demand to be paid. And she said, you just got hit with one hell of a bill from the state of Texas. She said, but you did the things they said you did at that trial, Damon. So you have to go and pay that debt to society. She said, but you owe your father and I a debt too, Damon. She said, we gave you all the opportunity, love, and support to be anything you wanted to be in life. And that's how you repay. It's what we saw in that courtroom. She said, it's not going to work. She said, we raised you in Port Arthur, Texas, a giant melting pot of a city, gave you a great moral compass, which you chose to not use. So here's the debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said it's not going to work, Dan. You were never raised to see race, and you're not going to start now. She said you will not get any tattoos while you're inside that prison. And y'all, if I didn't have the sleeves on, I'd show you, man. I was in the prison almost 10 years. These guys want to tattoo every inch of your body. And every time one of these guys came around and said, hey, West, let me put a tattoo on you, I'd be like, hey, man, I can't do it. My mom said no. Yeah, real talk. Because that conversation that day, May 18, 2009, right after my sentencing, she's telling me, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, or do not come back to us at all. It's a very tough love from my mom. She said, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? And through the tears, I told my mom, I was like, yeah, I got it. But what do I know, y'all? I'm a white middle-class guy in America. What do I know, really, about the penitentiary, right? So I get back to the pod in Dallas County Jail, and I'm asking all these guys that had been in prison before, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And every guy I talk to, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, they're telling me the same thing. Man, you have to get into a gang. You can't survive without a gang. You're going to the worst part of the Texas prison system where everybody in the building you live on has life. They call it the life sentence building, and you can't come off the life sentence building for 5 years. They're like, man, make your life easy, West. Get into a gang. But there was this one guy, this older black man named Mr. Jackson. And I say he's older. He's probably in his 60s. I didn't get Jackson's real age. But Mr. Jackson was a career criminal. Been out of prison 4 or 5 times all of his life. But he was the most positive guy I've ever met in my life, y'all. This guy walked around Dallas County Jail with a smile constantly on his face. And one morning, Mr. Jackson comes up to me. He's got a cup of coffee in his hands and a smile on his face. And he said, West, man, I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and these dummies, these idiots. Talking about you got to get into a gang. He said, do not listen to these fools. He said, but if you want to keep that promise you made to your mom and your dad and God, and yourself, he said, let me tell you what prison's going to be like. Let me lace you up. He said, the first thing you need to understand about prison is prison's all about race. He said, race runs the entire disgusting institution. He said, when you walk in the pod, there's going to be a television set. In front of the television set, there's going to be rows of benches. He said, that first row of benches, you can't sit on that first row of bench. That's for the blacks. He said, that's our row. Don't sit on that row, you get your head smashed in. He said, the second row, you can't sit on that one either. That's for the Hispanics. Don't sit on the row either. He said, but the third row, if there's a third row, that's where the white folks sit. He said, if there's no third row, you sit on the floor, man. He said, so don't get into a wreck over race. You don't have the numbers in there like you have on the outside. He said, because it's about race, when you walk in the door there, the white gangs, they run the show in there. The gangs run the show. He said, but the white gangs get the first dibs on you. Aryan Brotherhood, Aryan Circle, White Knights, the Woods. He said, you got to fight them all. You have to fight all these guys. He said, if you don't give in to their ideology of hate out of fear, there's that word, y'all. Fear is a liar. Fear makes us see things and do things that aren't even real. Fear tells us to believe things that things that are antithetical to our own well-being and the well-being of those around us. My co-author and good friend, John Gordon says fear and faith have more in common than just the letter F to begin with. John says fear and faith both believe in a future that hadn't happened yet. Fear is a negative future. Faith is a positive future. So John's always saying choose faith over fear. And that's kind of what Jackson's saying. So Jackson's saying don't give in out of fear. Don't give in to the fear. But get ready, because after you get done with the white gangs, then it's the black gangs that are going to come after you. The Crips, the Bloods, the Gangster Disciples, the Mandingo Warriors. He said you got to fight them all. The white gangs are going to send them, and they'll be happy to tee off on you because they want you to get in line with your own kind. But he said if you survive all that, and you can survive all that, you'll earn the right to walk alone. And he told me something about fighting that day that's been a mantra in my life ever since, and I share it with everybody I meet. When he told me, he said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. That's a huge lesson in life, y'all. Because that tells us that we're not going to win all of our battles in life. We're not made to win all of our battles in life. No one is that good. You are going to lose sometimes. But Jackson's saying, every time you lose, just pick yourself up and get ready to go again. And he saw, when he's explaining this to me, he's seeing that I'm just in awe and fear of the terror and violence I'm about to walk into. That's when he says, hey, Wes, let me break it down for you another way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. And he said, anything we put in this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. He said, I'm going to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water, and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So he walks me through it. He said, first things first. He said, if I put a carrot in that pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, what happens to the carrot? I said, well, a carrot turns soft in boiling water, Mr. Jackson. He said, that's right. He said the carrot goes into the water hard, but the water, the prison, turns that hard carrot soft and mushy and weak. He said the carrot got beat, he got robbed, he may have gotten raped, and he may have gotten killed. He said you don't want to be the carrot in prison. He said, what about the egg, West? What happens to the egg in the pot of boiling water? And I said, well, the egg turns hard, Mr. Jackson, like a hard-boiled egg. He said, that's right. He said the egg is the shell that protects it physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, his heart has become hardened. He said, now, if your heart becomes hardened, you are incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love, you have become institutionalized. And you will not come back as someone your parents recognize because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it. And that's when he asked me, what about the coffee bean? A coffee bean? I didn't know what happened to a coffee bean in boiling water. Mr. Jackson shared with me one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. When he told me, he said, if I put a coffee bean into that same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you got to change the name of the water. Because he said that coffee bean, Wes, the smallest of these 3 things, he said, small like you, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power was inside the coffee bean, just like the power is inside of you. And he said everybody in life puts out energy, negative or positive. He said whatever kind of energy we put out, we attract back. It's called the law of attraction, and it works. He said, so you want to walk around prison all the time with a mean mug on your face? You want to try to look hard like a scowl? He said all you're going to do is attract the most negative people to you like that. He said, but conversely, if you walk around that prison with a smile on your face, and you let those guys know they're not getting to you, he said, man, you'll change that prison from the inside out. He said, you'll change the prison from the inside out. He said, the best part about it is the other coffee beans in prison, the other positive inmates, they'll find you because of your energy. You'll attract them to you. He also told me what my first day in prison was going to look like, y'all. He said, when you walk into the door of that prison, and they give you your cell assignment, he said, do not run to your bunk like the guys that are scared. You're going to the worst part of the prison system. He said, you put your bags down, put your back against the wall, and just let it happen. I'm like, let what happen, dude? He said, your heart check. Most important fight of your life, the heart check. He said, when you walk in the door there, you're a new face on the block. He said, there's going to be a guy that comes up to you first. It's going to be a white guy because you're white. He's going to want to know what gang you're riding with, what family you're riding with. He said, man, get that guy out of your face as fast as you can and get ready because that second guy that comes up, he's not coming to talk to you, man. It's going to be another white guy. He's coming to hurt you. He said, when that guy gets within range, put your fist in his mouth. Get the jump on that first fight. And the last thing Mr. Jackson told me in August of 2009, when I'm getting ready to get on that prison bus, I'm being shackled up to another human being to get on the prison bus, Mr. Jackson pulls me aside. He looks at me. He says, West, go out there and go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean. Man, if this old man is shooting me straight, if he's shooting me straight, that means that the power is inside of me. If the power is inside me, then it can't be in the hands of the criminal justice system or the guards or the other inmates. Not unless I give it to them. If the power is inside me, that means no matter what situation I'm in, what environment I'm in, what kind of adversity I face that I won't survive, I'll thrive. I got my chance to find out, too. Man, prison was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life, y'all. When I checked into prison, I became inmate West number 1585689, and it was rocking and rolling from the word go. My book, my autobiography, The Change Agent. The Change Agent talks about those first 2 months of prison in pretty good detail. Let me tell you about my first day. I walk in there, got a mattress under one arm, a couple bags of property. I go into the pod. They let me in. Boom! I look up, and I'm in this giant room. Multiple tiers of cells. It's loud. Everybody sees me. The volume drops to 0, man. Everybody's staring at the new guy in there. I'm freaked out, y'all. I'm looking for 45 cells because I'm going to make a run for it. 45 cells, the furthest cell from the door, by the showers in the 3rd tier. So I put my mattress down, I put my bags down, I put my back against the wall, and I wait. Doesn't take 5 minutes. Here he comes. Little bitty white guy comes up first. He's got a little shaved head. He's got tattoos from head to toe. Eyelids are tatted up, everything. And he comes up, and he gets in my face, and he opens his mouth, and he's got this meth mouth thing going on, and he gets up in my face, and he's breathing on me, and he's drunk. I can smell the hooch on it. He's been drinking the homemade wine they make in prison. He's breathing on me. He's like, "Hey, white boy." He said, "What family you riding with, white boy?" I was like, "Man, get out of my face, little dude. I'm riding with God. Please, leave me alone." He laughed at me. He said, "God isn't here, white boy, but we are, and we're coming to get you." And he stumbled his little drunk butt off. Y'all, I'm terrified. I'm ready to pee in my pants. I'm so scared. But I didn't even have time, because here he comes. The biggest corn-fed white dude I've ever seen in my life. This guy was a giant, man. He's coming down the 3rd tier. He's walking down the run, and he's just staring down the day room at me. Muscles and veins ripped out of his shirt. He's coming down the stairwell, and I finally get a good look at him. The top of his bald head is a swastika all around the crown, man. Just a big skinhead. This guy's coming down the stairwell, and I see it. All I see is a swastika, 2 beady eyes, and a bunch of muscles. But y'all, I played sports all my life. I can be coached, and I remember everything Jackson said. And when that guy got within range, man, I hit this dude in the mouth as hard as I could. Boom! And in 20 seconds, my first fight in prison was over, because that dude had me on the ground beating the heck out of me. He beat me from one side of the day room to the other. Y'all thought I was going to tell you to beat that guy up, huh? People ask me everywhere I go, "Did you get him?" No! I didn't get this dude, man. That dude beat the heck out of me. Fighting, man, let me tell you the reality of this. I'm not a tough guy. I'm tough in the sense that I can endure a lot, but I'm not some kind of great fighter. From Dallas County Jail to the penitentiary, I've probably gotten 3 dozen fights, y'all, and I lost 75% of those fights. I mean, I got my butt kicked all over the place. But I won by what Mr. Jackson said, because I showed up every time. He said, "You don't have to win all your fights, you got to fight all your fights." And I just kept showing up. Every day I kept showing. Somebody would call me out, I'd go fight them. Somebody called me in the showers, I'd go box them. Took about 2 weeks to get to the white gangs. After about 6 weeks in prison, I'm still fighting the black gangs, and head out to the rec yard one Monday morning. And if I'm going to fight these guys, I'm going to do it playing sports, because I'm an athlete. I get myself in a basketball game out there, y'all, and I mean, this is the bloodiest, most dangerous basketball there is. Basketball, hockey, and football combined. I get the basketball that Monday morning from these guys after one of the game was over, and I basically tell them, "Look, I'll give you your ball back, but you let me have one shot to get in this game. I make it, I play, I miss it, you kill me. Done." I make my shot that day. And I'm out there every day after that for 6 straight days. And on Saturday, when this basketball massacre is over, these guys in the rec yard circle up around me, man. And they say, "You know what, Wes? You pulled something off out here we had never seen a white boy pull off before. You took everything we had, and you gave it back when you could. That took guts, but you never once got racial with us." They said, "Man, you don't have to worry about the blacks the rest of the time in your prison. You're good with us, man." And that felt good. But you know what went through my head first before anything else? Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, that coffee bean story. Because the real takeaway from the story isn't about the scared white boy that got us respect that day. We got that. The real takeaway was those men on that basketball court. Some of those guys had 20 years of a bad belief system. Says the guy with the same skin color as me doesn't belong in their world. But in 6 days, those guys made a change. In 6 days, they became coffee beans. So I knew it could work, because you can't deny what you can see. So I started working on myself. I started trying to become that coffee bean. And I remember something Mr. Jackson told me whenever he was telling me the story about the carrot egg and the coffee bean, because I asked him, I said, "What do you find more of in prison?" And he fired back real quick, and he said, "Eggs." He said, "The egg is a natural evolution inside that environment." He said, "You'll probably become an egg too." And I didn't want to become the egg, but I was becoming that egg. One night I was having a conversation with my cellmate, this guy named Carlos. Carlos was about 5'4", a little bank robber from San Antonio. Dangerous little dude, but he was a little bitty guy. Carlos had the top bunk, I had the bottom bunk, a little 10 by 12 cell, 45 cell was our number. And one night I'm laying there in my bunk, and I'm telling him up there in his bunk about the story of the coffee bean. And Carlos was a real animated little guy. He jumped out off the top bunk. He was like, wow. He said, I love this coffee bean story. I love the concept. He said, but you're not a coffee bean, West, and you're never going to be a coffee bean. And I'm like, Carlos, how can you say I'm not a coffee bean, man? Who, you don't get to decide who used to be a coffee bean. He said, because the way you think. He said, the way you think holds you back. The way you think controls the way you act. He said, all action is born of thought. And thoughts without action, he pointed down to the day room downstairs, full of inmates. He said, that's what thoughts without action look like. He said, if you want to become that coffee bean, you have to stop looking at prison as a punishment. You got to change your mindset. Change your mindset, he said. Stop looking at prison as a punishment and start looking at prison as an opportunity. There's that word again. I started this presentation out talking about finding the opportunity in adversity. Now think about the adversity I'm faced with. I'm living in a maximum security penitentiary in Beaumont, Texas, and I've just started a fresh life sentence. And this guy from San Antonio in my cell is telling me this isn't a punishment, this is an opportunity. And I was like, Carlos, I don't understand. How do you call this an opportunity? This is a punishment, man. He said, this is your opportunity if you want it to be. He said, you got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to become the best version of yourself possible. He said, what are you prepared to do with this opportunity? So I got up the next morning. I woke up, my feet hit the cold concrete floor of my prison cell, and I said it out loud. Hey, God, thanks for this opportunity. And honestly, I didn't believe it. Not the first day, not the second day, not the third day, but I kept getting up. I kept putting my feet on the ground, and I kept saying, thank you, God, for this opportunity, and working on myself. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and months became years. But I finally figured out how to become that coffee bean inside that maximum security living hell prison. 5 ways of doing it. I'm going to share them with you tonight. I've been sharing it with your kids all day today, too. The first rule about being a coffee bean is about positive body language. Your body language is powerful. Mr. Jackson told me, when he was telling me about the coffee bean, he said, you're either going to infect the rooms you go into with your negativity, or you're going to affect them with your positivity. And kids understand that now. It's like the whole thing, we talk about finding the opportunities in adversity. One of the opportunities with the coronavirus is to relate some of what's going on. And so I go into a school and I talk to kids and said, your negative energy, think about that like a coronavirus. You can infect someone with that, right? But your positive energy is the vaccine. The vaccine is positivity, y'all. You're positive. And it starts with your smile. What happens when you smile, there's a chemical that your brain releases called endorphins. And when you release endorphins, you feel good. It's kind of like that feeling you get when you've been laughing really hard. You feel good. And now you've got something you can give. You can smile when you're by yourself and release these endorphins. You don't have to be around other people. But when you're around other people and they see you smile, people read your body language, and they smile back. Okay, this is going to be a comfortable crowd. Some people do. There's going to be people in that room that don't smile back. Negative people. You have one of two choices in a room full of smiling, positive people. Most negative people in a room full of smiling, positive people, you know what they do? They get with the program. They become positive. Because human beings have this inherent need to want to belong and be loved. At the core of being human, we want to be part of the pack. I want to tell you how much so that's true. Side story. When I go into prisons now and talk to men and women that are locked up around the country, I tell my story and all the crazy things that have gone on in my life, the amazing opportunities, God things that I call them, the doors that have been open to me since I've been out of prison. And it never fails. There's always an inmate that comes to me after the presentation and says, hey, Damon, you got an amazing life. But of all the things you've been able to do since you've been out of prison, I want to know how you did that. They point to my wedding ring. How did you find someone that would love you again after all the mistakes you made in life? Because that's what I want. And that's what we want to be at the core of being human, y'all. That's what we want to be loved. But there are going to be those negative people, the truly negative people in a room full of smiling, positive people, the ones I call the hardcore, hard-boiled eggs. And you want to take care of those people? Be positive. Because you know what they do in a room full of smiling, positive people? They get out of the room. They quit. They quit their jobs. They quit the school. They quit the team. They quit the organization. They quit hanging around the water cooler because no one's there to gossip with them anymore. And that's okay. We want to try to bring everybody along for the ride, but we're not going to be able to, y'all. Some people are going to fall by the wayside, the negative ones, because we're not going to let one negative person destroy our rooms, our teams, our culture of positivity. And y'all are building a culture of positivity right here in Nixon right now with all the adversity you're facing. The second rule about being a coffee bean is working out every day on yourself in 3 areas: spiritually, mentally, and physically. This is a tough one, y'all. I was locked up with guys that could play in the NBA. They could play in the NBL, in the NBA, the NFL. These guys are physical specimens, huge, because they worked out all day on their bodies. But they didn't work out their minds, and they didn't work out their souls. You want to be a coffee bean? You got to work out on all three. I got into a program of recovery when I was in prison, and I learned how to pray. And I learned to pray in recovery in 2011, and I still pray to this day. This is my spiritual workout. People ask me all the time, what's a spiritual workout? I give you my spiritual workout. I get up in the morning, I hit my knees, and I say the same prayer every day. It's the only thing I pray for. It's a two-part prayer. You can have it. I say, hey, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you, and let me recognize it when I see it, because I don't want to miss that. That's it. I don't pray for anything else. I don't need anything else, because I've trusted my faith that if I take care of what God needs me to do for him, that he will meet my needs too. Not my wants, but my needs and wants. It's a whole different presentation, y'all. He'll take care of my needs too. And at the end of the day, the other spiritual workout, I'm laying in bed at night. I ask God, hey, God, let's do a checklist. How was I today? I think it's page 85 of the big book right here, or 86 or 88 or something like that. How was I today, God? Was I a good person? You know, what did I do to put back in the stream of life? Hey, do I owe someone an apology? Because I need to make that. But one of the big questions in my spiritual work is I got to ask God, do I owe someone forgiveness? Because the opposite of forgiveness is a resentment. And a resentment is like poison. You want to destroy yourself from the inside out? Resent something. Resent a person, place, a thing. Here's the thing about that too. When you resent somebody, a person, place, or thing, whatever it is, most of the time they don't know, and if they ever find out, they don't care. You're the only one that cares about that resentment. Let that go. I'm not taking that with me into another day. My mental workout. Mental workout is everything you read. What kind of books do you read? What kind of videos do you watch? What kind of websites do you go to? Your social media feed? What are you posting? What are you watching? What kind of news do you watch? But tell you something. If you're watching something on TV that calls itself news and people are screaming at each other, that's not news. That's negative entertainment. And America is addicted to negative entertainment right now. Turn that stuff off. We're being poisoned by that stuff. We're addicted to it. Your mental workout, y'all, you are what you eat. That's not just about food. That's about everything you put in this big brain of yours up here. Feed yourself the right stuff. And physically, take care of yourself. You get one body in this life. Get enough rest. Take care of your health, especially now with this pandemic going on. Take care of yourself. At the end of the pandemic, you're going to see a lot of what I call Post and Kellogg stories. In the 1920s, there were two cereal companies in America, Post and Kellogg's. Post was a giant. They were huge. They had all the market share in America. Kellogg's was real small. They couldn't compete with Post. But in October 1929, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. And when that happened, Post quit doing the things that made them great out of fear and doubt. The Depression, made them live in fear. They quit marketing. They quit running radio ads. They quit inventing new cereals. They fired people. They laid people off. They hoarded their cash. Kellogg's, in the same event in time in history, saw what Post was doing. You know what they did? They put the little bit of money they had into marketing, ran more radio ads. They invented a new cereal during this time called Rice Krispies. Ever heard of Rice Krispies? And by 1933, 4 years into the Great Depression, Kellogg's overtook Post as the biggest cereal company in America, and they've never looked back since. That happened during the Great Depression, y'all. You're going to see a lot of those Post and Kellogg stories from different parts of American culture. Whenever somebody is going to say, hey, look, what did you do during the pandemic? Did you find an opportunity in there? That's what we have to look for. The third rule about being a coffee bean is the secret to life. The secret to life is called servant leadership. And servant leadership is helping other people achieve their goals in life. Helping to raise other people up to a different station of life. Because when we're helping other people, that's when we're at our best. And that's what we're called to do, y'all. We're here to help other people out. That's how it works. We all have this amazing power to help other human beings. There's a story I'm reminded about this from a guy named Mr. Rogers, the children's television show guy. Anybody else watch Mr. Rogers? Yeah, I did. I love Mr. Rogers. I see, Coach, you watch him too, huh? I love Mr. Rogers. There's a little goofy sweater, and he changed his shoes out. Loved him. But Mr. Rogers, before he was Mr. Rogers, he was a Presbyterian minister, and he told this story from the early 1960s. He said it was at a church service one Sunday in Pittsburgh. He said they had a substitute preacher come in that day. And he said that substitute preacher gave a sermon that day, and when that guy's sermon was over, Mr. Rogers thought to himself, that was the worst sermon I've ever heard. He said this guy was terrible. He was awful. Went against all the rules of giving a good sermon. Almost put him to sleep. And just as Mr. Rogers was about to turn, there was a little old lady next to him. and tell this little old lady how awful this guy was, he stopped. He bit his tongue. Because the little old lady next to him was in tears. She was in tears and she was crying. And she turned to Mr. Rogers and she said, "That was the most beautiful sermon I've ever heard." She said it was the absolute right thing I need to hear at the absolute right time of my life. And she said, "Oh my God, I'll never forget where I was this day that I heard this sermon." And that's when Mr. Rogers realized, wow, everybody has this ability to connect with human life. Even this preacher that he thought was so terrible profoundly impacted this lady. But he learned another very important lesson that day. He learned that while he was coming in judgment, that little old lady was coming in need. In need. Right now, so many of our brothers and sisters in this country of ours are coming in need. How are we going to meet that need every day? If you get to the end of your day and you're doing your checklist and you haven't found someone in need, then you didn't look hard enough that day. Fourth rule about being a coffee bean is knowing what you do and do not control in life. This is what I learned inside. This is what I want to tell you about too. I was in a recovery meeting in prison. And we start our recovery meetings off in prison with this beautiful prayer called the Serenity Prayer. Y'all ever heard the Serenity Prayer? I got some recovery people in here, right? God gave me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So the guy that brings the meeting into the prison, he goes up to the chalkboard in the chapel, and he draws a line from one side of the chalkboard to the other. He says the first part of the prayer. God gave me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. He said the things you cannot change are on God's line. He said, and God's line is bigger than a chalkboard. It's infinitely long. It goes from one horizon of the universe to the next. He said, and every time you try to grab something off of God's line, you hurt yourself and you hurt other people because you are not God and God doesn't need you to play his role. He said, so stay off of God's line because you've got your own line. And he goes and erases a little inch out of God's line. And he held his fingers up an inch apart to show that little inch line that he erased. He said the second part of the prayer, the courage to change the things I can. He said the things you can change are on your little 1-inch line. And he said the little 1-inch line, he defined it as humility. Because he said humility is defined as being right-sized. When we're right-sized, then we can be useful again. He said, and on your little 1-inch humble line are the 4 things God gives you to work on, the 4 things you control. He said the 4 things you get to work on every day that God gives you to work on, the 4 things you control are what you think, what you say, what you feel, and most importantly, everybody's going to see, Damon West, what you do, your actions. What you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. And he said the last part of the prayer was most important, especially for addicts, but mostly for everybody, is the wisdom to know the difference between the big line and the little line. Every day I got to remind myself, Damon, that's not on your line. That's not on your line, Damon. That's not on your line. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I repeat that stuff. People must think I'm crazy if they walk around and hear me saying it's not on my line. It's not on my line, like Rain Man, you know? Not on my line, not on my line. But I have to remind myself all the time because I want to take stuff off of God's line, but I got to, no, that's not mine. And when I was in prison and I finally accepted this, because the first day I heard this, is that me? The first day I heard this, you know, I didn't believe this. I didn't buy it. It took me a little while to buy it. That's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to admit that your entire world of control stops between your ears. But it does. The things going on around you during the pandemic, the White House, the World Health Organization, the CDC, none of these people called Damon West in Port Arthur, Texas, with how to fix the pandemic. Because I had all the answers down there in Port Arthur, but no one called me to fix it. I knew what we needed to do. No one called. Because it's not mine to control. But I control how I responded to it. And you control how you respond to your crises in life or your things that go on every single day. But that's it. You don't control the events, you control your response to the event. You control the controllables. 5th rule about being a coffee bean is that your past doesn't define you. Y'all, your past wins don't matter. Your past losses don't matter. Your past is your lesson. We've all got a past. We've all done things we're not proud of, but you know what? It's okay. Let that stuff go. Don't let that stuff carry any weight over you. Use your past to teach yourself and teach other people with it. Your past is your lesson. The present today is your gift. Not a gift for you, a gift for what you can do for others. How much can you pack in the stream of life today? That's the gift you have when you wake up every day. And the future is your motivation, but here's the warning. The warning in this presentation. Motivate yourself with the right things. Because if you do not, If you motivate yourself, if you identify yourself, if you get so wrapped up in money, material things, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house do you have, what's in your bank account, these things, some of them are pretty important, but they're not you, they're not your soul. If you get so wrapped up in that, you run the risk of becoming a prisoner in your own mind. And I'm going to tell you this. This is from the guy that spent almost 10 years in a maximum security prison, or the guy that teaches about prisons in America. But I can tell you what the toughest prison in America is. The hardest place to do time in this country is the prison in your mind. I meet more people out here in the free world that are locked up than I ever did when I was in a prison. More people are in prison by their thoughts and by their things than by steel bars and barbed wire and concrete. You can take that to the bank. And the way you avoid becoming a prisoner in your mind is you put your value, your self-worth, your identity in the things that really matter, things that are truly yours, things that make up who you are. I'll give you an example. My life. My value, my self-worth, my identity is in three things. My faith, the relationships I built along the way, and my ability to serve other people. There's no pandemic. There's no economic downturn. Heck, there's no prison sentence that can take away one of those three things. You know why? Because those are the three things I walked out of a prison with. I got to bring those with me. If you'll find a way to put your value, your self-worth, your identity in the things that truly matter, you'll find yourself always being free, and you won't become that prisoner of your mind. And I want to share with y'all one more lesson that I learned whenever I was out of prison in a program of recovery, because I got some recovery folks in here today. I want to share this really cool lesson with you because it helped me out. People ask me all the time, because my sobriety date is July 30th, 2008, when a SWAT team came in and took me into sobriety at gunpoint, right? People ask me all the time, are you tempted? You ever get tempted to drink or do drugs? The answer, yep, it's happened. I'm going to tell you about a time it happened. I was out of prison for about 13 months. It was Christmas of 2016. Been out of prison for 13 months. I'm at a Christmas party with my friend and his wife. And we're at this party, and my friend's wife is drinking this glass of red wine. And I'm close enough to the red, and I'm around people that drink all the time. My wife drinks around me, my parents drink around me. I'm okay with people drinking around me. I'm the guy that's got to change. I'm in recovery. But something about this red wine, I got close enough to smell this lady's red wine, and I thought to myself, whew, that wine smells good. I bet it tastes good, too. I think I might get myself a glass of red wine. Then I stopped. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? I just thought about drinking a glass of wine, man. Oh, my God. So I freaked out. My friend and his wife were like, you okay? I'm like, no, I got to go. So I go off, and I get in my car to leave the party out front. I'm shaking. I can't drive. And I call my sponsor in my program recovery. And I call my sponsor up, and I tell him, hey, man, something terrible just happened. And I explained to him what happened. He laughed at me. I'm like, man, why are you laughing? This is serious. He said, Damon, you're a drug addict. You're an alcoholic. He said, these things are going to happen to you, man. This is welcome to our life. Because my sponsor's been to prison before. He's a recovering drug addict, recovering alcoholic, He understands it. He said, welcome to our lives. This is going to happen, man. He said, but you have a program recovery. He said, and you use your first tool, which is to call somebody. And that's what a program recovery gives us. It gives us tools to live a life. He said, so you use your first tool, which is to call somebody. He said, congratulations. He said, let's go to the next tool then. Now that you called somebody, let's go through this tool that I call playing the tape out all the way to the end. He said, I want you to imagine you're back in that party, and you're with that lady, and she has her glass of wine, and you get one of those glasses of wine too. He said, now go get that glass of wine. How does it taste? I said, all right, wine's good. The wine tastes good. Everything I thought it was going to be. He said, good, drink that glass of wine. He said, but were you a wine drinker in the world? What was your drink of choice? And I said, oh, man, bourbon. I love bourbon. He said, well, now let's get you a glass of bourbon, because that's what the wine's telling you. The wine's telling you want bourbon now. He said, so drink your bourbon. You drinking bourbon? I said, yeah, okay, I'm drinking bourbon now. He said, that's good, man. He said, bourbon's good going down. He said, but you were into the drug thing, too. He said, you're like me. You like drugs, too. He said, well, now you're drinking bourbon. What are we doing? What kind of drugs are we going to do now? I said, well, cocaine. If I'm doing bourbon, if I'm drinking bourbon, I got to do cocaine, right? He said, that's right. He said, if you're drinking bourbon, you got to do cocaine. These are two addicts talking, y'all. It sounds crazy, I know. He said, so do the cocaine. So, all right, I'm putting in the cocaine. And I'm feeling it, man. Your brain is firing away now because you're going back to a place you hadn't been in a long time. He said, but I remember your story, Damon. Your story wasn't about cocaine that did you in. That wasn't the drug that did you in. He said, what was that drug you liked so much? I said, meth. He said, that's right. You loved that meth, didn't you? He said, What I need you to do is go do that meth now, because that's what the wine, the bourbon, and the cocaine was telling you all along. You want to be back doing that meth again. He said, so fire up some of that meth. He said, are you doing that meth? I said, yeah. You know what? That's it. I'm doing the meth now. He said, good, smoke that meth. He said, how's parole going? It's like, ooh. I said, I forgot about parole. He said, well, you're an addict. Addicts and their addiction don't care about it. They don't care about their own kids. They'll just let everything go. He said, what did parole tell you was going to happen to you if you couldn't fulfill the obligations of parole? They told me that they were going to send me back to prison for the rest of my life if I came back. He said, so you can't pass your piss test. Where are you going now? I said, man, I'm on that white prison bus again. I'm shackled up to another human being again, and I can feel it, man. I'm sweating on that bus. My wrist has got a handcuff on me. He said, you're going back to prison for the rest of your life, aren't you? I said, yeah, Rocco, that's where I'm going. He said, that's right, that's where you're going. He said, now look, he said, I remember those bus rides. I remember when I used to have to go back to prison when I was in my addiction. He said, so you're going to be hungry when you get off that bus ride. He said, throw your bags down, throw your mattress down in your cell, and head on down to that chow hall, because you're going to be hungry. He said, what was the worst meal they ever served you in prison, Damon? When I fired off real quick, I said, pork noodle casserole. I don't know what's in pork noodle casserole, and the prison people don't either. It is slop. It is slop. I mean, I found a pig ear one time in my pork noodle casserole with a tag on it. That's how bad pork noodle casserole is, y'all. He said, good. He said, go down to that chow hall, get you a big old bowl of that pork noodle casserole, and wash it down with that glass of wine, because that's where that glass of wine is going to take you. He said, you got it? Do you understand where that glass of wine is going to take you? I said, yeah, I got it, man. I got it. And I snapped out of it. I was like, I got it. He said, it's good. He said, now look, you hang up this phone with me. You go back in that party and have a good time like a normal person. Good night. And he let me go. But that one simple exercise of playing the tape out all the way to the end to see where that one drink is going to take me, because that's where we get into our addiction, man. We think, you know what? I've been sober this long. I could do it. I can have one drink. It's not the first drink. It's not the 10th drink that gets us. It's that first one, y'all. So, have this program recovery. Have some amazing doors have opened for me in life. It's just a thrill to be in front of y'all today. We can get to share with y'all and get to share with your kids and be a part of y'all's culture here in Nixa. So what I'm going to leave y'all with is what I call my call to action. And my call to action is the one I keep giving to all your kids today, and I'm going to give it to all to them yesterday. All 6,500 of them are going to have the same call to action. You can take this home to them too. The call to action is this, y'all. Life's a pot of boiling water. We already know that. Life's tough, man. You didn't get here and not know life is a pot of boiling water, but now you know what to call your days in that pot of boiling water. You're going to have those days that make you soft and sad and weak like the carrot. You know what? That's human nature. It's going to happen. We're going to have bad days. I had a carrot day last week. Then you're going to have those days that make you hard and mad and mean and angry like the egg. And you know what? I had an egg day last week too. And I was just telling, my wife told me I was a carrot and the egg in the same day last week. I had a bad day. Yeah. But I'm going to share with y'all one last tip from inside of a maximum security prison. And it's this. You have this amazing power inside of you, just like that coffee bean power. You have this power inside of you to start your day over anytime you want. Having a bad day, that's a choice. You choose to have a bad day. Because at any time of the day, 9 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night, it just doesn't matter. If you're having a bad day, take a step back, take a deep breath, say, you know what? I don't have to live like a carrot, and I don't have to live like an egg. And then go run and jump in that pot of boiling water called life. And you know what? Tell life, turn it up. I got this. I'm a coffee bean. And the longer the coffee bean sits in that pot of boiling water called life, the stronger that pot of coffee is going to be, Nixa. So my call to action to each and every one of y'all is the same one Mr. Jackson gave to me 12 years ago when I was getting on that prison bus to go serve that life sentence. It's this. You go out there and you go be a coffee bean. Be a coffee bean, y'all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for my, thank you. I think they're ready to get the ball game, huh? Everybody ready to get the ball game?
Mr. Ozark is able to have here just a little bit. And let me say, because I didn't on the front end, thank you to Union Hill for allowing us to use the building. The guys parking were absolutely awesome. Thank y'all. Have a great night.